Okay, just 2 seconds and it should be all set up.
Showing the streaming on mine.
Good. Right. Hello, welcome to another episode of Accountants Are Sexy, Change My Mind. Today I have the very lovely Mark Swindale joining me, who's discreetly hiding his cup of tea. So if you'd like to comment to see this cup, then please do. So Mark is the coach and community manager. Oh, hold on, that's me. I think it was you. Hold on, there you go.
I'm sure I recognise that voice.
Yeah. Mark is the coach and community manager from the Accountants Mastermind, working alongside Simon Chaplin. I think you've been there about 3 years. I've just seen on your LinkedIn profile. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you've seen quite a lot during that time, because it's been an experience over the past couple of years. That's for sure. But would you like to give the audience just a little bit more of an insight about what it is you do at the Accountants Mastermind?
Yeah, sure. So obviously part of what we do is we have a community which consists of Facebook group, WhatsApp group. Our values are inspire, challenge and support. So we hope to offer that within our community. Within that, we also offer events. So we do events. We did one last week and a half ago on people, how to find, hire and induct new team members. And it's all dedicated for accountants. But primarily we are a mastermind group. So we have mastermind groups for accountant practice owners to grow themselves, obviously, and as well as their practice. So we meet 6 times a year, depending on whether it's a virtual group or a physical group. We have speakers and just lots of different information sharing and supporting, really.
Wonderful. The when you posted earlier on LinkedIn, you said that one of the things that you definitely want to speak about today is pricing. This is such a hot topic, and I don't think it's ever not going to be a hot topic. Why is that so important to you?
Well, obviously, as you said, we've been working with Simon, and the accounts industry is new to me. Was then. Not so new now, because I've had a baptism of fire with everything that's gone on.
Oh, I hear that.
But essentially, my background is running IT and telecoms businesses. So used to dealing with the typical customers that don't really understand value and everything else. And over the years, I've done lots of stuff on it myself, but also over the last 3 years, having working with accountants, it is the number one topic that comes up for us. Or one of the top 3 at the very least. But for me, it's the one that carries the most emotion and fear.
Yeah, there's the word, emotion. Isn't it funny how much emotion pricing can bring?
Yes, and that's one of the things that we do, or I have done with accountants, is we've broken down this whole project, because the other thing is overwhelmed. So people go, got to put my prices up. Where the hell do I start? It's such a big thing. And one of the things that we always do in the Accountants Mastermind is talk to people about breaking down their goals into actions, which to coin the phrase is, how do you eat an elephant, and bite-sized chunks. So that's what we do. And I have developed a process for putting fees up, but also, as I say, it works more around the emotion and the fear than it does the physical doing, if that makes sense.
And you said that your experience before accountants is more the IT side, but they don't appreciate value. I appreciate that, because I've come from a sales background in IT myself, so I fully appreciate that. But what's the difference? Why do you think it's when pricing for IT is less emotional? I found there's less emotional triggers when it's pricing. They're typically other people's budgets, something that you need, tangible assets. But what's the difference when it comes to pricing accountancy services?
Well, interesting enough, the business I was running was doing IT support, so it wasn't tangible.
Okay.
And so that's why I think there's a link in between what we did and how we did it, and the value piece and all the rest of it, because we only ever had people invest in their IT or wanted to pay for support when something went wrong.
Yeah.
And there is a link there. So you don't know what accountants do behind the scenes. You don't know what your IT company is doing. We could have fixed 10 faults for them without them knowing, certainly the business owner, because we'd be working with their teams and everything else. And that for me is the link between those two. Is most people, I have had an accountant, so I kind of having a bit of experience and going, well, I don't know what you did for us. And unless there is that value piece. And obviously that was until I moved my accounts over to Greenstones, Simon's company, which is kind of how we met.
Okay.
So obviously then I understood the value more because that was how they would sell.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I've had varying experiences with accountants, and I kind of use this within my own support that I offer to say I'm a customer. I'm not an accountant. I'm not looking at it from your perspective. I'm looking at it from my perspective. And my perspective is that I didn't know what the hell was going on. Right. And that's really useful information when it comes to like the accountant seeing what service they're really providing, isn't it?
Yeah. I have this bit of a running joke with people that I always say that if you change your tagline on LinkedIn, keeping you out of prison, people might all of a sudden value what the accountant does. Now, I know that's a really extreme version, but it's just, that there isn't, I always said to people during lockdown and COVID and all that kind of stuff, HR and accountants became the fourth emergency service, to steal AA's old phrase. They became the fourth emergency service. Every time Rishi stood up, certainly when he mentioned the F word, that was when everyone rang their HR, rang their accountant, said, what's going on?
Yeah, and wasn't it? It was mind blowing at the time at the speed of which things were changing, and the assumption that accountants got information before other people, which they didn't. They were watching the same program
and understood it.
Yeah, and had spent the time digesting, reflecting, and working out what it means to each individual person. Yeah, that's too much.
And how different it was to yesterday's information that they got.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a different tone in the air this year. I think things feel different from the conversations that I'm having. Do you have the same conversations?
Yeah, I think there is an element of fear still around energy and fuel prices.
Yeah.
I don't want to use negative words because I think it doesn't help. I think there is still a fear around that, but I think it's a completely different scenario, and I think there is lots of people looking to push on. Go, we stood still for a little while. Now is the time when we've got to go for it, because there was lots of uncertainty.
Yeah, I also think that the past year has created some breathing space.
Yes,
people are more on top of their everyday work, so when they've come to the end of this year, they're a bit more like, I know what's going on. It might not be pretty, or it might be pretty, but at least I know what's going on.
Yeah, I again, it's lots of lessons during COVID, because you didn't know what was going to happen, and I think people have gone. We firefighting.
Firefighting.
Whatever the words are.
Because it's live, that's why.
Yeah, I know. We did some firefighting. And therefore we didn't have perhaps as much control as we wanted, and now the dust is settling, and I think people are starting to, okay, what mistakes did we make and what can we learn from it? I think that's the beauty of it, and that's why I think the accountancy industry as a whole massively surprised me because of how well they came together. I know there was lots of communities out there that came together during these times, and accountants certainly were one that wanted to work together as opposed to fighting against everybody else.
It's one of the most special things, isn't it? Like, I haven't experienced this anywhere else, and I worked in recruitment, and recruitment was kind of collaborative, and I'd say collaborative, it was more competitive, but you definitely came together as recruitment consultants. There was definitely camaraderie there. But I've never experienced anything quite like the accounting space. They are, in my opinion, so friendly. The odd ones withstanding, obviously. So such a community feel, which makes the events even more special. So going to these events is like a real buzz, because everyone just wants to see each other. You mentioned that the pricing, and we'll come back to it because I want you to provide some more kind of depth on that topic, but you said it was one of the top 3 things that people talk about in the mastermind. What are the other ones?
Probably process and systems, or practice management, and team. staff issues.
Yeah,
I would think are probably the top three.
it is a challenge. And is that retention or hiring or both?
All of it.
All of it, just people.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because because we have a conversation. Well, lots of the conversations I have, and I suppose Simon, was something that I got from Simon a long time ago. And there's really only three problems: time, team, and money.
Yeah.
But I, having heard lots of the speakers that we have and my own experiences, I actually have drilled it down to just one.
Okay.
And the overall problem is communication.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. Because if you've not got enough money, you're probably not selling yourself right. So therefore it's your communication, which you would know more about than anybody. If you're having problems with your team, it's just purely communication.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different. So if you take all of those elements, and actually the reality is it's just purely down to communication. From my perspective, it creates a bigger picture, I accept, but it is just purely down to communication.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. When you watch programs and you can see them not saying the one thing that would just help all of this problem go away, and obviously there wouldn't be a film or a program without this chaos, but from an outsider's perspective, sometimes you can see that. Yeah. Sometimes you can say, but if you only just helped your staff understand this, if you only just said this, then all of these problems would go away. Yeah. Do you have the same feeling?
Yes.
Is that a good analogy?
No, it is 100%. And the most used word, and I was going to say the most used word, and I don't mean overused. I just mean the most used words we talk about to any of our members or the community is absolute clarity.
Clarity, yeah.
Because the reason most of the time that somebody doesn't do what you want them to do is because they haven't got absolute clarity. And again, flip it back to any of those things that we talked about before. If your marketing's not got absolute clarity, you're not going to hit the right person. If your price increase hasn't got absolute clarity, someone's going to be annoyed. If you haven't given absolute clarity to someone about getting your documents in on time, there you go. There's probably one of the other four from the top three. Getting your information in on time, which is a whole different rant I've got. But the reality is it's because of there's not clarity.
If I wasn't working so much with accountants, I would probably be a really bad customer. Because I have no idea. I still don't have any idea what goes on behind their doors. I don't know what they do. I didn't even know my own responsibilities. And if I go back 8 years to when I first started and just randomly started a business because I could, I didn't even know what the difference between bookkeeping and accounting was. I didn't know, when I had an accountant, that I needed to actually be doing my own books. So there is a lot of stuff that people might assume that customers know. That's where the value is, and that's where
the sales comes in, isn't it? It's magical, really, because even when I was running the IT business, I was telling people what I thought they wanted to know about what we did.
Yeah.
One of our members did something recently, and we were able to share it with some of our other community members. But he did an iceberg, and he basically did what you see us do, and then below the water what we do, and they'd spent quite a bit of time on it, and it was amazing. And the response he had to it when he sent it to his customers, because all it was just a friendly hello. We're now pretty much out of COVID and things are returning to normal. We've had changes here and all that kind of stuff. It was just a general letter saying hello to the customers, saying hello, we're still here. Sent that, and I, from what I understand, the feedback was, because it was people just didn't realise how much they do.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's really good. I've seen these iceberg diagrams. Sorry, I've got a dog just
no, you're right
around me. I've seen the iceberg diagrams, and it's so true, like what they see and what they actually do underneath. But I'd never seen it used in that way. But that, if I got that would be great for me. I'd be like, oh, I see, I get it now, rather than just like, what am I paying for? How much do you need? Because then it all comes back down to money, price. No value. Yeah. So let's move on to this price thing then, because I think that you're going to be able to help some people if they're listening with their pricing. So where do you want to start with that?
Well, it's as I said to you before, for me, it's as much about the emotion and the fear as anything else. And if you start with the project of I'm going to do this, it's just too huge. It's just far too big. You know, if you've got somebody that's got 200 customers, where do they start? And the reality is the pricing is so, it is important on the basis that, especially coming up to now where people are fearful of paying all their utility bills and things like that. I mean, a story was shared at one of our groups 2 weeks ago, and they were telling us about their office energy bill going from £3,000 a year to 12 or 14,000 pound a year. And it's just, where does that come from? Where does the money that needs to pay for that come from? And if you've not got the pricing right, that's going to add to the stress. So you've already probably got overworked team. You're probably overworked yourself. So you're working 12, 14 hours a day to get this stuff in. And one of the biggest things that we find is the resentment. So if you ask people about paying, ask customers, majority of the time it's because they feel they're getting too much for the value they're paying.
Okay.
And I always say, well, whose fault's that?
Yeah.
Because if they're getting a level of service they're not paying for, it's just
over delivering.
Yes, that's right.
This runs throughout so many different industries, though. This is definitely not exclusive to accounting. I see it all the time in marketing. Definitely guilty of it by myself. It's scope, guilt, and like you just want to do the best by them, and lack of boundaries. And I see this time and time and time again. One
of the best things that I've seen any of our customers do is step away from the pricing and let one of their team, who was already capable and had the great mindset for it and everything else, take over, because there was no emotion and fear to it. They trusted them, and any conversations around what was in scope and what wasn't, this team member did, because there was no, it's not that they didn't care, they absolutely did, but they cared.
But they're doing it by the book.
The reality and the really obscene thing is they cared about the business they were working for, whereas the owner of the practice always seems to care about the customer's business first. And I accept that that's a great thing. But they've got to pay their own bills.
So the staff member actually cares about delivering for the person they work for. That's so interesting. I hadn't actually considered doing that. So with pricing, do they, I mean, obviously there are tools out there. I use Practice Ignition, there's Go Proposal, there are other methods. You know, you can do it on the back of a fag packet if you want, but do you have or who smokes anymore? That's a really weird expression these days, isn't it? Who smokes?
Back of a vape packet.
Not quite the same ring, is it? But do you have a preferred method? Because obviously there's pricing methodologies as well. So you've got the very kind of itemized methodology, you have a package methodology, you know, where do you sit with that? Because there's so many choices.
Go Proposal obviously is one of the tools, and I have seen it in action and went up to see them a month or so ago, because of the work we're doing with customers on pricing. It was a conversation that we wanted to have, and hopefully we'll progress to more in the new year. I love how everything is open, and when you talk about value, and again, I'm sure the others do it. We've got customers that don't use it, and I've got simple spreadsheets that I help them set up to do it. But the reality is, the more open you are, the more people see, the more value they understand. And because for me, it's never about the price; it's always about the value. That for me is what really important, because if they don't see the information, they just get like you said, a fag packet that says your account is going to cost you 1,200 quid. Don't get me wrong, communication styles, there are people out there that want to know about that, and that's where you've got to pick your market. But in order to increase fees, or to have the level of fees that you are worth, and there's a really important emotional word there, is worth, a mindset word. It has to be out there. People have to know what you're doing for them. Because otherwise they don't see it. And a prime example of that, and it's a completely different subject, but is filing your accounts. Now, an accountant knows what I've just said, those words, what that entails. That could be a 4, 12, 20-hour job. you ask, if you tell somebody who is not an accountant that you're going to file it, guess what they think?
You're going to hit a button. That's
This can sound really bad. The amount of accountants that devalue their work by certain words within the history of accountancy, it scares me, to be honest, because it's just so important that they devalue it, or they shouldn't devalue it.
I think from a marketing perspective, I find that too many accountants want to teach people how to be accountants.
Yes.
And that's off-putting, and then they wonder why they're not getting the engagement that they want, and they're not progressing up like the other accountants might be progressing, and they think that the educational pieces are teaching people how to do their job when it's not.
No,
it's teaching people the value of what you do, and I think there's the difference. And it's difficult moving from one mindset to the other, because they are very process driven. They understand what's the technical side. Moving to the impact that they have and what they deliver to the companies, that's a really hard thing.
Yeah.
So how do you help them with that?
Well, again, for me, it's mind shift. So not many people start businesses, certainly small businesses, as business owners. They start them as technicians. If you go back to the book, Gerber, what's his name?
Yeah, Michael Gerber.
Yeah. Anyway, that book's got. I wasn't planning on using anything from it, but the book. So we start off as technicians. So we're not business owners. So we've got to go through that journey. And I genuinely believe it took me 3 to 5 years. And in fact, the biggest impact, ironically enough, was when Simon, who was my accountant at the time, gave me that book.
Right.
Because all of a sudden I went, hang on a minute, this is me scrabbling around under desks fixing computers for the next 10 years if I don't change it.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's very similar thing with accountants. So you've got to take a step. At some point, you've got to take a step back and go, what do my customers want to know? What do they need to know? And that's kind of you kind of go from there, and then you can sell them the benefits and explain. Again, you go back to things like one of our customers was doing upsell on their products. They wanted and they spotted a customer that was doing bookkeeping that was never right. It was never on time, and it was all over the place. And when they actually spoke to them, so of course, from the accountant's perspective, they're going, customers, they never do anything right, they never do this and they never do that. Well, the reality is the customer hated doing it, absolutely detested it. So it wasn't that they wanted to annoy the accountant, they just didn't want to be doing the job. And the minute the accountant said, how much time you spend on it? And they said, well, whatever it is, it's too much and blah, blah. And they went, well, we can do it for 200 quid or whatever it was.
I get it.
Yes. If you've got a company, if you've got a customer that's running a £400,000-500,000 business, 250 quid is an hour of their time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so therefore you've taken an hour of their, saved them an hour of their time minimum.
And the stress. When I moved into bookkeeping as well as accountancy, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't have to worry about it. All I need to do is my bit. I need to focus on my bit, get the information to them, and they will help me with the rest. It's not about the time for me. It's about the stress.
Yes.
I'm not that detail. I'm not sitting there with numbers. I can't remember codes. I think I've got dyscalculia, which is like dyslexia with numbers. So things like that bamboozle the hell out of me. So for me, it's so much easier. My life is easier with them in it. And that's what they need to realise. My life, customers' lives are easier because you're in it.
Yes. Yeah, and it's a very trusting relationship. It needs to be a very trusting relationship. You think, you want to trust some industries that you use, but with accountants, you have to trust them before you start the relationship and the working relationship together. So from my perspective, they already have the trust. They just don't know what they need to do. Yeah. The customer, that is.
We are pushing time, and
we are.
This is flying past.
Yeah.
But there is with pricing.
Yes.
And this is where the kind of marketing comes in as well. What's your thoughts on having pricing on their website? Because with Go Proposal, where everything's very bespoke, it's harder. So what do you think about that?
So I think it's completely fine. I was thinking of a better word. So well, it goes back to the first stage of the process that I go through with any of our customers. There's a little video I've recorded, and I'll happily share it with you afterwards, about positioning.
Yeah.
And basically, it talks about where you position your business. So if you want a sausage factory that does tax returns
Mm-hmm.
and you want to churn them out, and that's all you want to do, that's perfect. So you've got, if on my positioning piece, I go to the supermarkets because it's really recognizable. You Aldi and Lidl, they make money, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're low customer service, low product range, everything is on the bottom.
Yeah.
You go to Marks and Spencer's and everything's at the top. They advertise to those people. They don't advertise to the same people that Lidl do because they don't want that custom. You know, they've got plush toilets in their supermarkets. Lidl don't even have them, I don't think, and all those kind of things. So it's about positioning. Now, I think if you are wanting to create a sausage factory, you have the price on your website because you'll get tire kickers. If you're high quality as well, but you want to put people off, there's an opportunity for you to do the same thing. But for me, anything above the lower level, it's got to be about what level of service and product that you're supplying.
Yeah. And with that comes elements of change and growth, because services don't remain the same, needs don't remain the same. So there is an opportunity, like the methodology Go Proposal say, is reprice yearly. I think it's a yearly thing, so it comes around before the next one kicks over to reprice. It's funny, people ask me that question all the time, should I put prices on my website? And I typically say, well, let's have a look at what your customers are doing. And not your customers, your competitors are doing.
Yeah.
Because when you do that competitor research, and if they've all got their prices on, then maybe you don't. If they don't have their prices on, maybe you do, because you want to help differentiate yourself and offer a different level of service or just a different way of working with them.
Yeah, I think it's about I think it's also completely about target market, because if you want to knock out MOTs for 35 quid, you put it on your website. If you want to knock out MOTs at 95, you need to be selling the benefits. So you might have to have the price on there, but it needs to be further down and explaining the benefits first.
Yeah, 100%. Wow, this has gone so fast. We're going to have you back on. We'll talk about something else. But I don't know whether you've listened to this podcast before, but there is always a final question that I ask. So what is the sexiest thing about accountants?
Ooh. What's the sexiest thing? Do you know, I have listened to it and I should have thought about that a bit more.
Well, you really should have. It's not even catching you off guard. Come on.
No, I know. What is the sexiest thing? I think that the service that they do provide and the things they do, they just don't tell people. Yeah. So the things they actually do, I think, is the sexiest thing. There is lots of stuff that goes on within, and they care. No, I'm going to reverse. They care.
They care.
They care.
Yeah.
Genuinely, most
come up quite a few times when we have asked this question. They care.
Yeah.
And what they need to do is they need to show people that they care.
Yes.
So, right, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to be pointing people to your LinkedIn profile. Is that the right place to get hold of you?
Absolutely, yeah. And as I say, I'm more than happy to share we've documented it's called the 5 Ps to Perfect Profits, which is easy if you can do tongue twisters. So I'm happy to share that. If people want to have a look at it, obviously there's an opportunity to have a conversation. We've had to go into it deeper, but this is a high level version of how we do it.
Fantastic. So what I'm going to recommend to anyone that's listening who's interested in that, connect with Mark on LinkedIn, drop him a message, say that you've heard him here and that you'd like access to that video, and then he will send that information to you. But it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.